Hey guys, so I just realized that the last time I did one of these videos for Windward was on January 30th. That was a long time ago. I have to admit, the issues I had earlier, they kind of bummed me out a bit, and I more or less put it on hold until recently. And this screen that you see right here, the loading screen, was pretty much the last thing I did back in February. In any case, it's not worth talking about that. What is worth talking about is what I have now. If you recall from previous videos, if you've even watched previous videos, the majority of the issues I had were with interactive cloth, which is using physics. Well, recently I've realized that there's a different cloth in Unity called skimmed cloth. And I didn't know that at the time. I wish someone actually told me to have a look at it. I didn't even look at it until Unity 5, actually. And it has a much better cloth system that I can't really talk about. But let's just say that all the issues that I had with the previous version of cloth, they're gone. Regardless, working with Unity 5 let me realize that there's something else to look at. And I got back to Windward and had a look at the skin cloth. As it turns out, it does pretty much everything that I wanted to do, minus a couple of things that I was able to overcome using code. And the results are actually pretty sweet. This ship that I'm controlling right now is just using the skin cloth, and you can see that the cloth behaves as you would expect, and it's all nice and pretty. Cloth improvements aside, I've also decided to change the environment of the game itself. In the previous version of Windward, and in the previous video, there was a wind gizmo. In Windward it was on the bottom right, in the previous video it was on the left side of the screen. It was showing the direction of the wind, as well as the speed of the wind. Here I've decided to replace it with the environment effects themselves. I don't know if you can see this in the video, but they're fairly subtle clouds or fog, volumetric fog, moving along the direction of the wind. And of course there are bigger clouds as well, although, yeah, there's one right here. So I want the player to pay attention to the game's environment rather than to the user interface as they play the game. Of course, this ship does not travel very well when it's moving along with the wind. It travels faster if it's moving somewhat at an angle. And it's something I hinted at in the previous video, that certain ships will have different traveling vectors when it comes to the wind. The skill bar that you see on the bottom side of the screen is actually most likely going to go away altogether. I generally want to keep the amount of UI to the minimal in all cases. So what I'm thinking of doing is actually, if there's a skill to be used, then it will appear on whatever it's meant to be used on. So for example, if my ship is in need of repair, some kind of a subtle button will show up here that I'll be able to click on, rather than having it be on the bottom of the screen where it's not context sensitive at all. But for the time being, it's just here to test the functionality. Map system is also in place again, and as I travel along the map I will uncover the fog of war, and this fog of war change is actually persistent as well. Here you can see me subtly uncovering something that was hidden before, and it essentially paints the map as I travel along it. Here I've discovered a cove with a ship here. As I mentioned, all of the fog of war changes are actually saved to the terrain, to the disk rather, so the next time you come back to the game, whatever you've uncovered will be there. So here I stop the game, I come back, and a little bit later you can see that the changes were kept. Anyway, that's just semantics. On a more interesting note, I've decided to make the game a lot more modder friendly. After playing games like Kerbal Space Program for a bit, I can't imagine doing it any other way, to be honest. What I wanted to do with Windward is make it completely accessible. And better still, I want to make it possible for users to mod the game and other players to join their games without having to download any mods. To that extent, what I've done is actually made the entire configuration data. So like configuration, all the items, all the town names, well, I have a system for generating the town names, as well as the localization for the game. All of it gets synchronized the first time player joins the lobby, basically. So the first player who starts the server, joins the lobby, he sends all this data to the server, and then when players join a server to play with that player, they will effectively download this data right away. In other words, the player can mod the crap out of the game, even adding an entire new localization to the game, like, say, a Russian language, for example, without having to involve the developer, that is myself, at all. It's just a matter of modifying some text files for the most part. Here, for example, you can see all the definitions for the factions available in the game. So I was playing the Valiant faction earlier, which is the red one. So colors are defined here, colors for the name, icon, as well as the symbol that shows up. So for example, if I wanted to change this symbol to something else, like a custom image, I would place this custom image in a specific folder called symbols, and then just change this symbol to something else, like for example, dragon. Now when I go back to the game, hit play, it will automatically pick up the changes, and you can see that the symbol is now a dragon. And the texture itself is just basically a PNG. So you can create any kind of symbol you want and put it in the game. Here you can actually see a save file for one of the players, the player that I was just playing. It basically specifies which faction I am, which is the first one, which zone I'm in, which town I will respawn at when I die, as well as the inventory and equipment for the player. Now the inventory management is not in yet, but it's fully functional. Here, for example, I have equipped an item called Windmage. I don't know why it's called that. Just copy paste, I guess. It has a specific quality, type, blah blah blah. None of this is important. All of this is completely changeable. You can define your own item categories if you want. It doesn't matter, the game will just pick it up, no problem. What's interesting is here I have an effect on this item called Lantern. So what happens is when the item is equipped, and when it is part of the equipment, it automatically gets equipped. What happens is Lantern, I can't spell, prefab actually gets created and it will follow the player. So that light source that you saw in the game at night, it's not going to be able to show it right now because it's daytime, but there was a light source here that was visible earlier in the video. It was actually coming from this effect, which is attached to an item. So if I was to remove this item from the player's inventory, this effect would effectively disappear. Also, since the inventory is not referencing any kind of database or hard-coded anything, it's all in text basically, you can create any kind of item you want with any different types of stats. So here I don't actually have any stats on the item, but I can add strength, for example, 10. Well, ships obviously don't have strength, but just to prove a point. So now this item will actually have 10 strength, and the stat will be retrievable by the game. However, right now, since there is no inventory management, I can't show this in action. Here the file got saved back when I left the game, and you can see that the stat is still there. Also, this entire file's contents are actually sent to everyone connected to the server as well. So Players basically exist as a bunch of lines in a text file, and these text files are shared with everyone else. Now, of course, they're not really text files. They're just saved as text, just to make it easier for you guys to modify it if you wanted to. I figured text-based format is the most accessible way of modding the game anyways. Here I have skills, for example. Same thing. They just come as a bunch of text. One last thing I want to talk about is how the town names are generated. They're all procedural, but they're all generated from this data here. So there are 3 parts to every town name, maximum that is. A beginning, a middle, and an end. Now all of these can mix and match, and of course it can be just the first part, rarely but still, first part and the second part, first part and the last part. The only restriction is that there must always be a first part. The other 2 are optional. So when the player arrives in a new zone, all the towns will be generated automatically with the random names chosen from this file. Since this file's contents are actually synced across a network as well, it's possible for players to come up with their own names, or combinations, or translations into their native language, whatever they want. And of course, some of the names, like Lond plus Don, London, are possible here. Denver, Nashville, Athens, and so on, they're all possible using this system. Now, of course, not all town names are possible, but then again, it doesn't matter. So this file, with the few words that are present, gives something around 32,000 possible combinations, I believe, which is more than enough. Well, that's about it for this video. I honestly don't know if I'm gonna do these that frequently, because quite frankly, I'd much rather be developing, but if I do something interesting, I'll probably make a video about it, explaining how I did it for other people, in case they're interested. Which reminds me, I'm gonna do one more video right after this one that will explain what I did with a cloth and how I did it. Thanks for watching.